Number 3, Islam in crisis.
Which is a huge topic, and I mean, it was interesting to hear him talk about Islam in those terms and just say, you know, this is a religion in crisis around the world.
Emmanuel Macron essentially said, Islam is in crisis all over the world. Macron eventually showed the truth behind his statements. What lies behind all these claims is one simple ingredient: immense ignorance. Mr. President, Islam is a religion. It's been relatively consistent for over 1,000 years. Muslims are human beings who are followers of that religion. Human beings can be good, can be bad, they can make mistakes. Muslims around the world, in numerous countries, are in crisis. That would be a correct statement. But let's add context to that. Are Muslims in crisis because of Islam, or are Muslims in crisis for another reason? Perhaps Islam has been the constant. It's been relatively consistent. Yet the variable may have been, I don't know, let's go out on a limb here and say, foreign occupation. When you look at what has happened and what's currently happening in countries like Iraq, Libya, Syria, Yemen, Palestine, so many more for me to even count, I won't even try to explain to you that there is foreign occupation or Western influence and all those conspiracy theories. How about I let them tell you themselves?
I said, we're going to war with Iraq. Why? He said, I don't know. He said, I guess they don't know what else to do. I said, well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda? He said, no. He says, there's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq. We've got a good military and we can take down governments. And he said, I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail. So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, are we still going to war with Iraq? And he said, oh, it's worse than that. He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
But Macron, you know as well as I do, it's not Islam that's causing these issues. It's the West's obsession with Islam. Let me give you a few points here. Let's start off with the creating of fake propaganda content. All you have to do is search Bell Pottinger, not to mention the West clearly admitting that they have supported groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS.
And we know that this was growing. We were watching it. We saw that Daesh was growing in strength, and we thought Assad was threatened. We thought, however, we could probably manage, that Assad might then negotiate.
We had this brilliant idea that we were going to come to Pakistan and create a force of mujahideen, equip them with Stinger missiles and everything else to go after the Soviets inside Afghanistan.
The people we are fighting today, we funded 20 years ago.
In my 30 years experience of working with these groups, actually on both ways, on both sides, of radical groups and having been involved with them, nearly always standing behind radical groups has been a state actor or an intelligence service of a state actor. For all these decades since, we have been using Wahhabism in its radicalized form in order to pursue Western interests. So we've had this deep ambivalence in Western policy where we're both in bed with terrorists and fighting them at the same time.
In addition to all this, there's also Uyghur Muslims, whereby China has taken over their land, has forced them into a country whereby the Uyghurs don't even ethnically identify with. And the Chinese government is surveilling them, oppress them, arrests them, and puts them in concentration camps. I made a video about this if you want to check it out. Then you have the Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar. They're constantly subjected to murder, oppression, and there's a mass exodus, all caused by the extremist Buddhist government. Made a video about that as well. And how about India? Islamophobia in India is skyrocketing so high you would think it was a rocket going to the moon, where you have attacks on Muslims in the streets because of the rhetoric and the sentiment being spread by the extremist Hindu government. So you're right, Muslims are in crisis. It's just Islam is not the issue. And before I lose you, I'm not saying Muslims have nothing to do with this. I mean, this all happened under our watch. It is our problem because first of all, it's happening to us. And second of all, we're so divided that we can't do anything. And lastly, there are Muslims who actually benefit from this. They benefit from all this chaos while the rest of the Muslims suffer. But let's not pretend that Islam is the reason they're in crisis.